Over the last week and a half, I have typed this statement, deleted it, and retyped it countless times, with the purpose of conveying my message without derailing from the important facts that I want to share. So please bear with me as I read it to you. My name is Anna. I am now the oldest of 3 siblings, and I reside in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas with my kids. Daniel, known as Des, is my brother. A year ago in 2025, around noon on the 6th of July, our lives were altered forever. I was away on a business trip in Cancun, Mexico, when I received the news that my brother Daniel had been arrested and could not be located in the police database systems. There are no words that can accurately describe what hearing this stirred within me. We were born of good, law-abiding parents whose moral compass shaped us into who we are. This news of him being detained, especially within the current political climate in which deporting people who have committed no crimes have become normal, had us fearing for the worst. Being aware that sometimes it takes up to 24 hours before charges appear, I waited before heading home, with the intention that once we could see the charges appear in the court systems, we could proceed to get an attorney, if needed, and do whatever we could to bring Danny home. But that was not the only reason. If he was deported after his arrest, despite the fact that he was a permanent resident of the United States, I was preparing myself to travel back to Monclova, the city of our birth, and help my brother settle back into our old home, a place in which he had not lived since he was 14 years of age. That fear is always present for me as a U.S. citizen. I carry proof of citizenship with me everywhere I go. The next morning, I received another call, this time from my parents, and I listened to their voices cracked as they sobbed, recalling the events from the night before, when a no-knock warrant was executed at their house during dinner time. I will never forget the voice of my father as he described the officers aiming their guns at them. The horrors that my parents and youngest brother endure weren't few, and the nightmares they still have are a result of this. The officers spent over 6 hours rummaging through my parents' home, where my brother spent some nights due to his work being minutes away from there, and him being the main caregiver of my mom and dad. Before the raid was through, an ambulance had to be called to take care of my mother, whose health is already frail without the need of additional stress. This is unacceptable, and it was absolutely unnecessary. At that point, we knew this was not a simple arrest. The fact that after 24 hours, we still didn't know where Daniel was being held, nor the exact reason why, only added to our worry. While still in Mexico, I watched a video circulating on Facebook of my brother's arrest. It showed the orchestrated efforts from law enforcement to make sure his arrest was noticed by anyone in the vicinity of a public place. There was a SWAT unit. The FBI showed up along with a bomb squad. A drone hovered in the sky. And officers armed with AR-15s approached the vehicle while my brother waited in the truck. All of them showed up to arrest a man who had, according to the charges he was given later, taken a wide right turn. The use of all of those resources covered by our taxes could have been spared if the officers had simply and peacefully arrested him while he was still at my parents' home that morning. There was a surveillance vehicle outside of my parents' house that could have easily arrested him, but they had no warrant. Let me repeat that. They had no warrant for his arrest. So instead of getting a warrant, they created a false narrative that he had explosives in the truck, or that he was the money man for the random collection of people who were arrested after a noise demo on July 4th outside of the Prairieland Detention Center, in solidarity with the incarcerated immigrants inside, or that he had hurt somebody and he was a dangerous man. These were some of the reasons that law enforcement was either given or deduced on their own, since none of these reasons was founded on a single ounce of evidence. They were all speculations, bogus reasons to arrest an innocent person. Their whole case revolved around the box, but nothing inside the box that he carried. The box that is supposedly the reason why he is now behind bars. Absolutely nothing in that box fit any of those descriptions given above. Inside the box, there were zines, homemade pamphlets, essays, critiques, poetry, stickers, photos, letters, and drawings. All of the items in the box were personal belongings that my brother was dropping off at a friend's house in Denton, Texas. Nothing sinister, nothing macabre, nothing illegal. Each item inside that box is protected under our First Amendment. But innocent until proven guilty means nothing when you have been chosen to make an example of those who express dissent. When you are being treated like a criminal from the beginning and your entire life is torn to shreds to fulfill this purpose, hope is all you have left. I made it back into the States the night before his hearing and sat in the courthouse the next morning as my brother was brought in wearing a striped jail uniform, handcuffed on both his hands and feet, barely able to walk without tripping over the chains. There, sitting amid my brother's friends, I was appalled when the exhibits shown were not of a crime that my brother had committed, but instead of the noise demo at Prairieland, which Daniel was not part of. They showed a picture of him loading boxes into his truck, and then another picture of some of the contents of the box. To my horror, despite the defense presenting an excellent case of my brother's innocence, the judge stated that Daniel was a flight risk and a danger to society. My brother, an artist, an 18-year-old vegan, who's never met a stranger he didn't like, who always thinks and cares for others, both humans and animals, was considered a danger to society. The same society whose rights he defended every chance he could. But that wasn't all. An immigration hold was put on him the night before his hearing. As a DACA recipient, he had legal status for many years. But as a new permanent resident of the United States of America, the country he has called home since he was 14 years of age, being charged with a felony is a death sentence to his legal status, and a new challenge that we will have to face down the road. My brother was moved to Johnson County Jail, along with the other Prairieland defendants, and was kept in 24/7 in a tiny cell, strip searched several times a day, and psychologically terrorized and tortured by the officers of the facility. These things, without a doubt, were meant to break the detainees, and the psychological and emotional strain of being subjected to these conditions is noticeable when you speak to Danny. From there, my brother was eventually moved to FMC, where the prison conditions improved a little. He only shared the cell with one cellmate instead of 7. He was allowed to roam the common room and engage with other cellmates in conversation, playing games, watching TV, joining a Bible study, and growing a community. Danny was allowed to receive books and buy paper, pens, and pencils to draw. As an artist, this was a gift that he didn't take for granted. In September, NSPM 7 was signed, and suddenly, the defendants were referred by the federal government as the North Texas Antifa cell. The focus from the prosecution changed, and the terrorist language was added to their charges. Plea deals were offered to Danny, several of them. The most generous one that my brother was offered was to spend 5 years behind bars without the language of terrorism being included in the charges, and then face immediate deportation after his release. He, of course, refused for 2 equally important reasons. Number 1, he had no knowledge of the noise demo before, during, or afterwards, other than when he heard in the news or from third parties. But second, he had committed no crime and hoped, as we all did, that the truth would set him free. There was no way the government would put him in jail when he committed no crime. The prosecution had no evidence whatsoever because there was no crime to gather evidence from. Everything up to this point was speculation and even fabrication, and it remained so. Daniel had been behind bars for 4 months, awaiting trial for himself because he refused to cooperate and incriminate those who were at the lawful noise demo in which he neither participated nor was aware of. What happened next was shocking. My brother's case was added to a superseding indictment, along with the other defendants. He was the only person in that indictment who had nothing to do with the events on July 4th. On November 25th, due to a clerical error, FMC released my brother, and he was back with us for 9 days. During this time, he was free, but none of us were at peace. We spent every minute watching our backs, expecting another display of force to arrest him again. It didn't make sense why would they let him out when the superseding indictment was just filed. Regardless, we tried to make the best of his time out. Every minute was precious. I drove him to the animal shelter where he used to volunteer, and he held opossums and raccoons and even got to see a wee owl. The entire time we were there, he was crying, repeating over and over how he thought he will never get to hold one of them again. He expressed similar concerns when he ate all the vegan food that he had been missing, or as he admired the sunrises and the sunsets, or as he experienced the joy of creating and holding the tattoo gun again, tattooing us and getting tattooed by his brothers in ink as well. We went to the mall together. He attended my youngest son's piano recital, and we played K-pop Demon Hunters for him and Frankenstein as well. I drove him to visit all his friends who were available, and he was able to hug and spend time with his and Mari's 12-year-old daughter, whom he loves as his own daughter. He enjoyed a comfy bed, clean linens, and warm private showers. We surrounded him with love. Daniel seized every moment of freedom until the prosecution realized that they had made a mistake and he had to return to his imprisonment. The night before we took him to court, he celebrated his missed birthday because he was at FMC then, spent Thanksgiving with our family, and enjoyed a surprise Christmas party with all of his friends. The next morning, with tears in our eyes and broken hearts, we had to drive my brother back to the courthouse, where later that day he had a hearing, and the judge stated once more that my brother, the man who had just self-surrendered, was a flight risk and a danger to society. I could take a lot more time to describe every horror and heartache that he has experienced in a year of imprisonment for a crime that didn't happen. But nothing measures up to the feeling of loss and hopelessness we all experience when, after a long trial, the jury spent an extremely short time deliberating over verdicts for all 9 defendants. With no evidence whatsoever, my brother was found guilty along with the other 8 defendants on March 13, 2026. The deep despair plaguing my brother's eyes and voice ever since now haunts me. When the verdict was given, I was his first call. And his cries have shattered me in so many ways that I don't think I can be whole again until he is home. He asked, how is this possible? He didn't do anything. He asked, why was this happening? I know. And it makes no sense, became my default answers. On June 23rd, I walk into the courthouse for the sentencing hearing with my mom and my dad, hopeful that justice will finally be served and that my family's nightmare would come to an end. I was reassured by countless people who cited the U.S. Constitution that as long as my brother was innocent, we had nothing to worry about. He is innocent and has been behind bars for a year now. We have everything to worry about. Daniel has lost more than his freedom. His wife is in prison too. Together they have lost precious time and will continue to lose all the memories they could have created with their child. My brother's truck was taken as evidence, yet somehow it was released to the lien holder, who wasted no time selling it in an auction before my brother was even formally charged. Daniel also lost his trucking business. My father, who worked for my brother's trucking company, lost his job when the tablet used to log all the trips was taken by the officers who raided their home. My mom's health has declined further, and she is more dependent on us now than before. Without my brother's support, our parents are not having to sell their home. Their entire life has been turned upside down. When Judge Reed O'Connor sentenced my brother, an innocent man, to 30 years behind bars, I realized that my parents and I will spend the rest of our lives fighting for my brother's freedom. My parents and I will probably go to our graves using every breath and every last penny fighting for this injustice. 30 years for carrying a box of his own belongings has been deemed a crime in itself. But such a judgment is unconstitutional. It is unlawful and cruel. The judge listened to the defense lawyers. He listened to the witnesses for the defendants. He listened to the defendants make their own statements and discarded it all. A 30-year sentence for no violation of any law makes a mockery of our judicial system. Judge O'Connor confirmed at the stand what we suspected when he said, "The state wants to send a message to anyone who shares similar ideology." My brother was not being tried for a crime. He was tried because he cares about human rights and because of his association with a person who went to the noise demo, his wife, Mari. The evidence has been unsealed. You can read the court notes. You can watch and analyze the so-called evidence. You can look at it and think for yourself. But the truth is simple. The Prairieland Defendant sentences are part of an ongoing war on dissent. The extreme sentences are a punishment intended to scare and discourage those speaking out against systems of oppression. And no, for those who might be thinking it, even after all of this, I do not hate this country. Neither does my brother. But two things can be true at the same time. We can love our country, and we can oppose fascism and oppression. After all, this country was founded on those very principles of liberty, and it is our duty to defend and uphold the Constitution and call out injustice. There's so much more that I could add. The 365 days that my brother has spent behind bars have affected all the members of our family in so many ways. but I will leave you with part of my brother's statement during his sentencing, for this is his truth. I work really hard every day in this country, and I believe in human rights and helping others in need. I donate money and art to help animals and other people. I am a father. I am a husband. I am a teacher, a poet. I am many things, Your Honor, but I am not a terrorist.